Hello, you're listening to the Eric McKenna Project.
Cris, thanks for coming back.
Sure, thanks for having me.
That means you might have had a little bit of a good time
I had
last
a great time.
time.
Who doesn't like talking about music? I mean,
yeah,
if that's your passion, it's
well,
nothing.
you giving me the opportunity to talk about music with you is greatly appreciated.
Oh, I'm
no
glad
doubt.
to be here.
So I actually prepared for a show.
He has notes, people.
I don't think I've ever done this before.
Wow.
Yeah, I
He
wanted
did his
to.
homework.
Well, because we got your story last time, and we touched on some commonality in terms of music and so forth, but I wanted to come up with some different kinds of questions.
Sure.
To kind of put you on the spot somewhere.
All
right. First and foremost, how are you doing? How are you maneuvering this pandemic? Do you think we're going to possibly see some live acts later this year? They're all scheduling it.
Yeah.
But do you think it's actually going to happen?
That's a good question. How am I handling it?
Be honest with me.
I just want to thank you for inviting me so I could actually do my hair, put some makeup on, put clothes on that actually button and zip instead of something that's stretchy, like, I don't know, sweatpants.
Did you shave your legs?
Yes, I did. I always do that.
See, there you go.
Yeah.
So, okay.
So
well, there
for you,
go.
yes, I shave my legs.
Okay, that's good to know.
I do that every day.
Okay, well, there you go.
I do shower every day. It's just,
I
I'm
assume
saying,
that.
but when you haven't worn pants or jeans, it's like, wow, I really need to step away from drinking and eating and all that.
I think you're in good company there. I think most of the whole society.
Oh, absolutely. They say how many people are drinking more now than they did before the pandemic, and
yeah,
I find that true. I mean,
boredom, right?
Boredom or just
Slight depression,
you just got through another
anxiety.
day. Let's have a glass of wine. Or you see your husband working at home and he's all stressed out and I'm not working and I'm like,
have a beer.
Let's have a beer.
Wine, right?
Yeah, so.
I get it. But do you think we're going to see live music? We're seeing some kind of form of live music now with these drive-in shows and things like that. But I
had this conversation with a friend of mine who lives in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and he's a big music freak. And I told him, I said, I don't think, this is just my personal opinion.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know anything. I don't think we'll see any large-scale shows this year at all.
Okay.
I don't. Until, if they can't get the vaccine thing straightened out and everybody vaccinated, I don't see that happening. Maybe late fall.
Okay.
Possibly, but I'm thinking more smaller venues, less people.
Okay.
Probably a higher ticket price.
Of course.
Possibly. I mean, you figure all these artists have been sitting out for the last year and have made no money unless they've done the Facebook things or those types of things. How many bands up for the last 5, 6, 7 years were relying on the VIP packages where you spend $1,000 to meet Paul Stanley and Kiss? I know it's far more expensive than that, but I mean, if that's your opportunity to meet a band and that's the band you love, you do it. And the bands make that money.
That might be gone. That meet and greet thing for a while might be gone.
Sure.
Even if the band comes back to tour, that meet and greet. I mean,
Eric,
gone.
let's be honest. Look at the bands who are out touring. The Stones. Leonard Skinner's still out there.
Right.
Daryl Hall and John Oates.
Right.
I mean, all these guys,
Aerosmith.
they're in their late mid-60s to early 70s now.
Yeah.
And they're in that kind of scary age group for this whole, for the virus and all that stuff.
Good point.
So I don't see them going out and doing it, but it's hard to say.
Yeah. Have you gone
Maybe
to a
not
drive-in
this
show?
year. No, not yet.
Okay. Because I had Brian Drusky from Drusky Entertainment on, and it was fun, and he was lamenting, and he put a very good positive spin on everything, and I appreciated that. But we were talking a little bit about the drive-in shows, and they've been for the artists that can make them work.
Right. Or having a place. A lot of towns don't have drive-ins anymore.
Exactly right.
Luckily, we do.
Yeah. Have you seen comedians doing it? That's insane.
No, that would be a little weird.
I hear that they do it, and then people, they can't feed off the audience on the emotional connection there.
They beep their horns?
They're beeping their horns.
Oh, really?
That would be
I just was guessing.
insane. That would be crazy.
That would be funny. Yeah. Well, I mean,
a little obnoxious.
I think in order for anything to work right now, you have to think outside the box. You've got to reinvent yourself. If you're a restaurant, a flower shop, an artist, a musician, you really do have to think outside the box. Believe me, I'm the first person that I am more than happy to pay for an overpriced beer right about now just to see live music. I really am, because
I think everybody is.
That the last show I saw before all this happened was Howard Jones at Jurgles, and even then they cut the crowd back.
Wow.
And that was middle of March, and this is when all this was getting really hairy. And then he even said, he goes, this is my last show. I'm heading back home. He goes, this might be the last time I'm in the United States. Who knows? We don't know. So. But I think with a lot of the elderly, I don't want to say elderly, it's terrible. But I just
We're headed there.
But I mean, it's the older bands that we all love that are still out there touring, that they're the ones that are really the cash cows, the Elton Johns, the Billy Joels. They're the ones who are making all this money. So I don't think we'll see any of them this year, but definitely next year.
22.
I'm hoping. I mean, believe me, I don't want to be a negative Nancy.
Yeah, but it's funny how a lot of them are scheduling. Maybe they have to, but if you go to their websites, they're planning for something this year.
And you have to. You just hope that we get past this and we get back to some type of normalcy in our lives.
Yeah, and I think we will. I was my good friend Fred Koala was on the podcast a couple shows ago, and we were talking about the only fear that I have as a rock and roll appreciator and enthusiast is that will there be any lingering effects with the populace going to see shows for a while, like being afraid, just because a good portion of our population is probably not going to want to immediately come back and mingle.
Sure,
so that might affect attendance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then there's the talk about, well, if you want to go to a show, you have to have proof that you had the vaccine.
Yeah.
I don't know, that's all political as far as I'm concerned. But if that's what they have to do, but you're absolutely right. There's still a lot of people that even after the vaccines and all that will probably be fearful of being in large crowds.
Yeah, at least for a while.
I'm sure there's some way they can do a Star Lake show and make it safe for people.
Right.
But
a shed show or something else.
Maybe next year for sure, but I don't know about this year. I don't know. It's everything's so up in the air. I can't even get my mother a vaccine. Yeah. I did, thank God, but I know. It's just crazy. So I
know. Well, on the brighter subjects, you reached out to me over a Facebook post that I had about Paul Stanley having his R&B project.
Oh my gosh, it's
Soul
fabulous.
Station.
It's fabulous.
Yeah.
March 5th is when it comes out.
And I passed that information. I passed your review along to him, by the way. Yes, I did. Yes, and he owes me an email. Paul, if you're seeing this, you owe me an email. When you first saw it, what did you think?
Well, here's the crazy thing. My husband was playing it on his iPad, and he wouldn't show me. And he goes, "Can you tell me who this is?" And it was Ooh Child, And I'm like, so he's playing
the third edition. What's it? The band that sings that originally? Third Dimension.
Not Third Dimension. Oh, now you.
I'm sorry.
Dang it! I turned my phone off, so I can't Google
That's
it.
All right.
5 Stair Steps.
Maybe.
Yeah, but anyway, so I'm not looking at it. I'm hearing it, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty close to the original. I said, I don't know. I think I threw a couple names out. It was so far off base.
Okay.
And he says, believe it or not, that's Paul Stanley. And I'm like, what? Let me see. And he showed me the video, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it was fabulous. It was fabulous. And then when I started Googling about the album and all the songs he does, and I'm like, holy smokes, what took you so long? What took you so long to do this? And when you listen to the album, if you grew up in the 70s, and it's AM radio up and down.
It's good production here, though.
Absolutely. But, all the singers and the horns, and I'm grateful that he stuck to the originals pretty much. I haven't heard all the album, but, Al Green. To me, you don't touch an Al Green song. He's my guy, but, I thought he did a fabulous job.
Yeah, and it's obvious. I guess what I love about it, it's obvious that this isn't a big money making venture.
Oh no, it's a passion. It's a
thing.
passion
It's a
project.
passion thing.
Absolutely,
and it really isn't about money in any capacity.
No,
it really is about he needs to get this out.
Sure,
but it goes back to him being a very diverse person. The Phantom of the Opera. I lived that. Before I even started working with him, but I lived that era. Like he he definitely takes a challenge and he goes for it. And if you tell him he can't do something, he's going to try to do it.
I thought from what I've heard from the album, and it comes out on the 5th of March, is just I've loved everything I've heard.
So that opened my mind a little bit when you mentioned that. Like, so are you an R&B fan? And obviously you are. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that even further expands your musical palette.
Well, I'm the youngest of 5, so I have 3 older brothers and an older sister. So everybody in my family had their little kind of niches of what type of music they like. Yeah. My oldest brother loved, let's say, art rock, the Pink Floyds, the Genesis. Okay. Yes. My other brother loved the Beatles, that type of music. My sister loved all the R&B stuff, Brothers Johnson, Average White Band, Daryl Hall and John Oates,
that's R&B.
Yeah, back in the early days, it certainly was.
The late 70s, yeah.
And then my other brother, who's closest in age to me, is just a straight-out rock fan. AC/DC, Blue Oyster Cult, The Cars. He went and saw all those shows back in the 70s, so my background is a little bit of everything because of them,
Got it. Got it. You mentioned Al Green. To me, that voice alone and the range of Al Green is just something that I've never heard anything like it.
A couple years ago, my husband and I went to see him at the House of Blues in Cleveland.
Okay.
And I will tell you, it was a religious experience. It really was. I never walked out of a show feeling the way I did after seeing him. We sat next to an elderly black couple that were dressed to the nines. We were dressed in jeans and nice shirts and stuff. And then there were some other kids that were younger, but it was just a mixed bag of old, young, black, white.
He's charismatic.
He was fabulous. Well, he's a preacher.
Yeah,
so he had a little bit of that.
Was there some of that in the show?
No, I mean, just everything was just.
It was just good.
It's everything we need right now.
It's just good.
Kindness,
is just good.
love, positive, love one another, all that stuff. And honestly, oh my God, yes. Came out in a white suit. Yeah, he was. I mean, we walked out of there, and I looked at my husband, and I can't tell you how many concerts between the two of us we've been to, but it was like, that was something I've never experienced before in my life. Really? He was that good.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it just talking about it gives me gives me goosebumps.
Did you follow like the bigger R&B bands as the '80s progressed, like Kool and the Gang, and did you follow like Cameo or Rick James, Prince?
Sure. Oh, absolutely. But I mean, that was on pop radio at that time. You know? I worked at National Record Mart when Purple Rain came out.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about that. It sounds like my favorite. That's my favorite story ever.
Yeah, I worked at the Century 3
oh my
location.
Gosh. Okay.
But I only did that between getting out of college and getting into radio. So that was like maybe 6 months.
Yeah, what a better job for a kid, though, in that era.
Well, and I did it just so I could keep my hands in on what was going on in music. So if I got a radio job, I'd be, oh yeah, I know that band and that band. But I mean, here's the albums that came out that year. Prince, Purple Rain, Springsteen's Born in the USA, Eddie and the Cruisers soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
So those were like the 3 big ones that just, you couldn't keep them in stock. I mean, no sooner, and that was back when it was albums and cassettes.
Yeah, we're going to go there.
CDs weren't quite there yet, but I mean, you'd put a pack of Prince albums out, there'd be 30 people behind you, grab.
Wow.
The pins, I mean, we had that little round plastic thing with all the pins.
Oh my God.
New Kids on the Block, I think, were big then too, or they were just breaking, and good times. Cyndi Lauper, She's So Unusual, was out there at that time too. And
so, okay, let's just go there. So, to me, I will always try to explain to my children, my daughter has no interest, but my son once in a while wants to know what these album things are.
Right.
He knows what they are, but like, it's hard for him to imagine that was a thing at one time, because music's kind of disposable to them.
Sure.
They listen to stuff and it just goes, and but that experience is just not translatable. I try to tell him, look, these albums are more priceless to me than anything.
Absolutely.
I read them from cover to cover. There wasn't any real information about this band. This was a band, let's say it was Rush. The only thing I knew about Rush was once in a while DV would throw something on there, but everything was weird and quirky, and I knew who Skip Gildersleeve was, their manager. You would know the weirdest things because you wanted more information.
Absolutely.
And the album's kind of the vessel to give it to you. I'm guessing you had the same experience.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you'd read about it in Circus Magazine or Cream.
Hit Parader.
Or Hit Parader. Or Metal Edge. Let's see.
Yeah, that came
or Rolling
later,
Stone.
Yeah,
Rolling Stone.
Yeah. That's for big people, though.
But you'd at least, if you saw an artist was listed on the side, hey, Peter Frampton, whatever, it would be like, grab it, look at, oh my gosh, he's got a new album coming out. I mean, you couldn't go Google anything back then.
Right.
It was whatever you were able to find in a magazine, in the newspaper, or on the radio. You heard somebody say, hey, we've got a new album coming out or whatever. That was the only way you found out about anything. So it's that day. I'll never forget getting the Escape album from Journey, 1981, summer of 81. They opened up this little record store in Casti Village in Whitehall where I lived. Mm-hmm. And the girl had just gotten all the promo posters in.
Okay.
And I'm like, could I please have one of those? And she says, well, I'll give them to you after the record goes on sale. I'm like, okay, fine. Well, that morning, the doors were just opening. I run in, I get the album, and she gave me all the posters.
All of them?
Yeah, she gave me, it's a big one of the inside of the 5 of them.
Yeah.
And then I have some circular ones and whatever promo stuff she had that wasn't on the walls in the store,
Very cool.
she gave me.
Very
and I
cool.
still have it.
Very cool.
I can't get rid of that stuff.
Of course not.
It's my life. I have but Eric, I have nobody to give it to. I don't have kids.
I understand.
So, but it's one of those things that it's
part of your identity, though.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's part of my passion for music. It's a part of, journey.
Kids wouldn't dig it anyways. Trust me, mine don't.
Yeah.
Mine don't have
So,
any
but I mean, when you got
to it.
the album, you'd look at the words.
Yeah.
You'd go back and put that needle back on and sing along. So you got the lyrics just right, and you knew that Journey's Infinity album was dedicated to the guys in Leonard Skinner who died in the plane crash. You knew these things. You knew that on Daryl Hall and John Oates Along the Red Ledge, that Steve Lukather, who was just a teenager, crushed it. Robert Fripp was on that album, and all these crazy things. And it's just, you don't get that now with music.
No,
and it's
you
sad.
don't.
It really is sad.
It is sad. Now, did that change? See, I think that changed with the internet. I think you still had a little bit of that with CDs, although it was harder to read everything.
Right.
But man, having that tangible thing, because you associated that platter or that disc with that music and that feeling.
Sure.
When you download something, it's in the ether, and it's just you really connected to it.
It's not that personal connection with a song like it used to be.
Yeah.
How many bands would write something on the inside of the groove?
So you know that too.
There'd be like some little. It looked like they took like a pin, like the head of a pin, and just wrote something on it, like scratched something in it. And it's
people
like,
think I'm crazy when I say that. No. I remember bands used to do that.
Sure, certain bands did it all the time.
Every 100 records, they would write something in there.
Yeah, or it would be something that was pressed into the record as well. But it's like, that was oh my gosh, that's so cool, But yeah, it is kind of a bummer that music isn't what it used to be. As far as I'm glad I grew up. I think I said this last time. I would not trade my age to be younger, because I love the time I grew up in, still learning, still, appreciating things. But yeah, it's sad that the kids don't, unless you're a musician and you love playing a guitar and you hear about the Eddie Van Halens or the Steve Lukathers or, Alex Lifeson or whoever, and then you hear the music and you're like, wow, this guy's really good. Then they gravitate towards whoever that is and look at the records and start listening to stuff. Right. I mean, 8 tracks.
I know.
Frampton Comes Alive. I can remember exactly where in the songs it would click over to the next track.
Because the order was funky on those things, wasn't it? Like the order of songs was kind of funky. Yeah, well,
when you had especially something like, Do You Feel Like We Do, it was, the song is 13 minutes long or something. So obviously that's one track, Right. Good times. It
is good times.
Yeah.
And that's those albums were like intrinsically mine. Like I remember my mother being a big music fan, but that was a generation before. So the Stones and early Sabbath, even early Zeppelin, that was kind of her stuff. Right. And but she had albums, and I would go through them as a little kid, like, look, what is all this stuff? And she would hide the Rolling Stones albums from me because there were some risque things on there. It was just that those discs were every as important as the Levi's jeans I would save up money to buy. Or, that was part of me. Yeah,
music was my identity. And honestly, I wouldn't be married to my husband if it wasn't for music.
Right on.
Because it was honestly Peter Frampton that brought us together. And it was just one of these weird things. I was in college listening to the college radio station. He was on the air. And I was with my roommate. We're doing homework. And he played this obscure Peter Frampton song.
Lines on My Face?
No. I mean, we're talking
really
we're talking like nothing off the live album.
Oh,
yeah.
like okay.
But I had all of his records, and I was like, whoa, wow. Guys normally don't like Peter Frampton,
Yeah. I did.
Oh, I did too. And he, I mean, a lot of people did, but there was a point there when all the girls started loving him because he was a sex symbol and all that stuff that the guys who liked him were like, yeah, that kind of thing. Guys are. Right?
I guess, yeah.
So, but I ended up meeting him, and I was like, "Hey, was that you that played the Peter Frampton song on the air?" And he goes, "Yeah, why?" And I said, "I love him." And then that's how we made the connection.
How about that?
Yeah.
Over Frampton. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
Live albums were a thing in the mid-'70s. Think about all the bands that put out like live records.
Oh, sure.
That was a thing.
Sure.
Sure. It was Frampton.
Kiss.
I mean, it was Kiss had two of them. Skynyrd. Rush had multiples.
Right.
That kind of fell out of favor. Like it was a thing in the 70s, and the live stuff wasn't real prevalent. Like years later and decades later. Like I don't know why that is.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, Journey's live album, Captured, that just celebrated its 40th anniversary. I'm like, oh my God, really?
Yeah,
but I mean, they haven't done any live albums since then.
Right.
I mean, nothing that's been, maybe some tracks here and there, but
that was a thing.
And
I loved it as a kid because you would hear different versions and all those weird idiosyncrasies with your band. You'd hang on every note. Like for me with Rush, I can listen to By Torn to Snow Dog on Fly By Night, but then I can go listen to it in All the World's a Stage, and I can hear the differences. And you just probably spent way more time than I probably should have figuring all that stuff out. But I wouldn't trade any of that in.
No, not at all.
For any
I mean,
of it,
how many hours did you spend in your bedroom listening to music?
I can't even begin to.
I remember, and it was Peter Frampton, actually getting ready for high school and doing my makeup in a mirror. And we had this big table with beds that slipped in. I had the stereo, and I was lit. I don't think I had headphones on.
Right.
And my dad came in and was like, "Turn that bleep down. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. We're trying to sleep." I'm like, "I'm so sorry, But I got the new Frampton album, and I was listening to it, and Oh,
it's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, I want to get your opinion on who do you think is the greatest rock singer in your lifetime? It doesn't have to be your favorite singer, but the greatest rock singer. If you had to stack rank them.
Freddie Mercury.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not expect that.
Yeah.
Okay, and why?
I mean, he had a 4-octave range, for one thing.
Okay.
I just thought he, whether you're singing Love of My Life, which is such a beautiful song, or something, something off jazz or whatever, I just thought, as far as a wide range of music, I thought he was good. Steve Perry, I mean,
it's hard to argue against him.
Yeah, I mean, Steve Perry for vocals, yes, but even Steve Perry says, "Hey, listen, I can't sing those songs anymore."
Yeah.
He even said back in an article not too long ago, or maybe it was even a live interview, he said, "Listen," he says, "back then, all of us were trying to jockey for position on who could really belt it out." He goes, "I'm up against Lou Gramm. I'm up against, Mike Reno from Loverboy and all these bands, Mickey Thomas, and, and everybody's like, whoa, and he said, I could, whoa, but now I'm like, whoa, so, I mean, and some people, I just saw something with Ann Wilson not too long ago online, and it was like, she is incredible. As far as female singers, hands down, her. Yeah, and she still has it.
Yeah.
But...
Yeah. Bradley Delp, wasn't he Boston's singer?
Yeah.
Yeah, shame there, but he had some pipes.
Oh, yes. And that's I mean. When it was Journey, he was up against them, and, those types of bands, and every lead singer in that genre of, what do you want to call it? Arena rock is what people used to call it. I mean, all of them were fabulous singers. Lou Gramm was a fabulous singer.
I know.
And
I missed that though. There was like a musicianship, even with the vocals, because your voice is an instrument. All of that was really like there was a lot of thought put into like the experience.
Sure.
I don't know that it's the same today.
I was at a party and this was like early 78, I believe it was. And I was at a party and someone put on the Infinity album. And I was across the room. There's a zillion people in this party drinking and stuff. And somebody put him on. I was just like, who who is this? Who is this?
Really?
Like the whole Anytime and, I was like, wow. This is an incredible. I actually kind of thought it was a woman at first, to be honest with you. Yeah, with people talking and stuff. And then I went over, and the girl that was running the in charge of the stereo said, "Who is this?" And she says, "It's Journey." And I'm like, "Wow, really?"
What an album.
And I'd heard of Into the Future and things, and I'm like, that's not the same guy that used to sing for them before, I don't think. And I looked at the album cover, and I'm like, oh, okay. Went out and got it the next day, and hooked ever since,
That whole, I don't know if it was that one or the next one. Was Escape? I think it was Escape did Escape have Any Way You Want It on it?
No, that was
the next
Evolution.
one. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Infinity, Evolution, Departure.
Yeah, Departure was, that was
Departure
later,
was 84.
80.
No, it was 80.
Departure was first then. I'm confused.
Infinity was first. Then it was Evolution. That came out in 79.
Okay.
Then Departure came out in 80.
I didn't go back far enough.
Then 81 was Escape. And then...
What a band. I mean, and I think it's funny, when you think about greatest bands, they have to be up there. I mean, you can look at album sales, will tell it to you too, but the impact they had on modern culture for maybe a short period of time, but I mean, it was pretty heavy.
And I mean, you had Greg Raleigh. He decides to leave, and then you implant Jonathan Cain, and they picked him up on the Babies tour because on the Departure tour, the Babies opened up for them that year, and that's when they decided.
Well, the band was an evolution, really.
Really, yeah, and I love the stuff they did with Greg Raleigh, just because at that time, especially on Infinity and on the Departure album, they had Neil Schon sang on the Departure album, People and Places, and it was like, wow, why aren't you doing more singing?
But Sean was, and that's the thing about that band, never permitted. Sean's licks on some of those classic Journey songs they're so.
Oh, I love
it's
them.
melodic and very, but it's so good.
Yeah.
And
like Who's
selection,
Crying Now, the guitar, the end of the guitar.
Selection, but he had to have been bored in that band because his talent level is unbelievable.
Well, he did that.
He played with Santana. Didn't he start with Santana initially?
He was 15, I think, 14 or 15 when he started there. And then during the Journey days, he did the albums with Jan Hammer.
Yes.
And I love those. Because they're kind of funky.
Yeah.
But,
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then he did the HSAS with Michael Shreve and Sammy Hagar and Hagar, Sean, Arison, and Shreve. Yeah.
Yeah, Shreve. Give me the background on Shreve.
Michael Shreve is a drummer.
Why do I know that name?
Oh, he's I can't remember who he played with. Dang nabbit.
That's all right.
Brain doesn't work like he used to.
That's working pretty good.
Yeah.
I like Paul Rogers.
Oh my God!
When I think of
why is that man not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? That's a joke.
That's a joke.
Yeah, I love him. And there's a guy who still has the same voice, but he's also a guy who really takes extremely awesome care of himself. When I met him with Queen back in the arena years ago,
how was that show?
Fabulous.
Okay.
He was fabulous.
I never saw, even the video, I've never seen of that.
Oh, really?
I should
he was
go
fabulous.
search that out.
But I mean, he's a black belt in karate.
And he's a specimen. He's a human specimen, man.
When you take care of yourself like he does, you can tell.
No doubt.
He doesn't even look his age.
I know.
And his voice doesn't sound his age. It still sounded phenomenal.
Yeah.
Still sounded phenomenal.
Like I think now maybe the dynamic range of his voice is probably not on the same par as like Steve Perry or Freddie Mercury, but there's something beautiful
absolutely
about his vocal timbre or timbre, whatever how you pronounce it, but it's so unique to him.
Sure.
But
we don't.
perfect.
I don't want everybody to sound like everybody else.
No doubt. That's the
there's
beauty of it.
There's some people that are horrible singers, but it works. It fits. Warren Zevon was not a great singer, but my God, was that guy a great songwriter.
You aren't kidding.
There is somebody I miss right now.
You aren't
Everything
kidding.
and the madness that is going on in the world today, there is an artist I so wish was still with us because I think he would really put a pretty goofy spin on this. I've seen him
imagine the song
that
came out from this?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
He's a loss.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, still one of the coolest songs ever is Werewolves of London. It's
Sure.
one of the coolest songs for a lot of reasons. Musically, lyrically, just the production of it. It's just a great song.
Sure.
Period.
But then he comes out with an album, Enjoy Every Sandwich.
Right.
Because it's it's true. Life.
He's right.
Everything is fleeting, and nothing is guaranteed. And
sadly for him,
yeah, I mean,
that was foretelling too.
Yeah.
Paul Rogers, to me, I look at him as, to me, he's. It's a tough argument, but he's the best singer from my ears for that era. You know what I mean? For like classic rock music.
Sure.
But it's so funny. Like, but then again, it's so specific to like the Leonard Skinner had the perfect vocalist for that band.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean,
absolutely.
Not the greatest overall singer, but Paul Stanley was a great rock and roll singer with a unique New York tinged accent that really worked.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So you can't imagine Kiss with like Paul Rogers singing. You just can't interchange the parts that easily, And
I mean, when you're looking at Paul Rogers with Queen, well, of course, Adam Lambert is the perfect choice.
Right. But Adam Lambert wasn't around in the
of
sphere.
course not. But I mean, when you're looking at somebody to replace Freddie Mercury, when they said they were touring and it was going to be Paul Rogers, believe me, huge Queen fan, I was like, oof, I don't.
Because your mind couldn't rectify that voice with that music, right?
No, not when you're like, whoa, like how Freddie Mercury was able to sing and just command
How'd they
the stage.
handle the real high stuff for that performance? Did they have background singers? How'd they handle that?
I don't recall if they had background singers or not for that tour.
Okay.
I mean, obviously Roger Taylor has a fabulous voice.
Yeah.
So he picked up a lot, and I think they had another keyboard player perhaps that maybe did some background singing as well.
Okay.
But it worked.
Did you know that John Deacon, the original bass player, did you know there's a really, really weird story there? Like did you know that he like bowed out of Queen like in the early 90s? Did you know that?
Well, he bowed out after Freddie died. Him and Freddie were extremely tight. That's what I always heard.
Okay.
And when that happened with him and, when you die of AIDS, it's a horrible way to die.
Sure.
And that really affected him. And he had 6 kids.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he completely just...
Yeah, I wasn't even aware.
He completely fell off the radar.
I wasn't even aware of that. I had not paid attention that John had left the band like in the early 90s after Freddie.
Freddie died in 92, I think.
Who was playing bass for them? Do you know? For all those tours? They hired guns?
Somebody, yeah. Not anybody that I can say, it was, anybody I can remember. I
want to ask you a really strange question. This is the rock and roll people argue about this all the time. So why not just throw it at you and see what you think? The term dinosaur rock is out there, right? Meaning not that we're... I
haven't, honestly.
You never heard that?
I haven't heard that in a long time.
Oh, well, okay. It's a dinosaur rock. So some people think dinosaur rock
I think a lot of people call it corporate rock now.
Oh.
Maybe.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll get that was kind of like in the next question. You're jumping ahead of it. Don't get me confused. Old brain. People say the Big Five. Coming out of the 60s and ushering in rock and roll, modern rock, the Big Five.
Sure.
I think universally, Stones, Beatles, Zeppelin, The Who. The 4 of them kind of, it's hard to argue that those 4 don't belong in the top 5. What's your thoughts on that? She's pondering that. She may disagree.
You take every band for what they're able to do.
Okay.
When I look at Zeppelin, of course, the Beatles, of course, and I think when you look at it, you have to look at least in my eyes, you have to look at what they've accomplished, what they were able to sell. Did they stay true to their script, let's say? Okay. Like they didn't go off and try do something really stupid. Like get into a disco album, since you're talking about the 70s and stuff, like something like that. Yeah. Although the Stones certainly had their disco moments.
Yeah.
But Zeppelin for sure.
Okay.
The Beatles, absolutely.
Okay,
when you look at the Beatles, there isn't one artist that I can think of that don't acknowledge the Beatles as some form of influence.
Right.
The first time you saw them on Ed Sullivan, whatever the story might be.
Well, song structure especially, the melodies and the harmonies, there's just nothing like it.
When they broke up, I think Taylor Swift is older now than when the Beatles broke up. That's crazy.
Yeah.
What talent. They were kids.
Yeah.
The Rolling Stones, of course, The Who. Now, for me, I was always a much bigger Who fan than I was the Stones.
Oh, me too.
Always.
Oh,
because to me,
undoubtedly,
The Who weren't your the Who experimented with your Baba O'Reillys and those types of things. And then the Stones just kind of had their same...
That is stick. It worked.
I don't want to say...
You don't think?
Are you saying shtick?
Shtick, yeah.
Shtick?
Shtick, sorry. I didn't pronounce that correctly.
I don't think that's shtick because it's their formula and it always worked. But I might take the Stones out of that mix.
Out of the top 5?
Maybe.
The Rolling Stones? Okay, this is good. I'm glad I asked. I thought you may pull the Who out of there.
No.
Because people do pull the Who out.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, that's where people are going to. But for me, I've always been a bigger Who fan than I was the Stones.
There's more
and it's
power
not that I
there.
don't love the Stones.
Yeah.
I've seen them a zillion times, yes.
There's more power with the Who. There's like something like majestic and like in your face and like, I don't know. I can't. It's hard to define that band.
And I mean, when you look at it, the swinging of the microphone and the smashing of the guitars, nobody was doing that.
Armed in the wheels, arm wheels, Townsend.
Yeah.
The 4 of them were a force. The original 4 were a force.
Sure. But
now we're going to talk about the 5th, and this is
don't
where
know.
it gets dicey. So I have Sabbath in there as the bottom 5. Now that's just specific to me because I love metal, hard rock, metal, whatever it's defined as today. And you have to look at Tony Iommi as the godfather of metal because the metal riff did not exist until he laid it down on the first Sabbath album.
I mean, do you toss the Eagles into that?
You can. It's hard not to.
I mean, when you look at songwriting, I mean, they primarily...
How many sold?
Primarily wrote all their own music, with the exception of help from a Jackson Browne or J.D. Souther or somebody like that.
It's hard not to.
I might have to put the Eagles in that mix.
Okay. Okay.
Don't hate me.
I'm not hating you. I like the Eagles.
I'd probably have to put Queen in that mix as well.
They're a little later, though, right? I mean, that would be...
Queen was around early 70s.
I think the caveat might be what's coming out of the 60s to launch the 70s. I think that's where they get it done.
Then the Eagles probably wouldn't really qualify.
They're great. I think they had a greatest hits album in 73, which is nuts to me. Then they had when were they formed? 69?
Well, when they were formed and when they actually started, getting airplay, maybe 71, something like that, maybe. Okay, so if you're looking spanning the decade of the 60s into the 70s, the Stones would definitely have to be there.
Like ushering in rock and roll.
I mean, do you put Pink Floyd there?
That's a big one.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
And people say Hendrix too, but Hendrix wasn't around long enough. The body of work.
Yeah.
That Hendrix question, I'm of the belief that I didn't live it. It was before me and before you too. Mm-hmm. I get it, and I'm a guitar player, so I kind of get it. I'm not moved by it. It just doesn't. I respect it, but I also believe that had he lived, I don't think he would be this massive star that would have changed the dynamic of the face of music. I think he just would have been okay and kind of just went along, and he might not be a legend now had he not died.
I think we can say that about a lot of artists.
Because death made them legends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like Janis Joplin.
Sure, or I even, this past weekend, Kurt Cobain celebrated his 54th birthday, had he been here. And I said, I often wonder if, and I put that on my Facebook page. Yeah. Because I often wonder, had he not died, what would have well, obviously we probably would have never gotten the Foo Fighters.
No doubt.
But I mean, what would have happened to him? Would he have branched off and done something else? Would he have been a coffee shop a coffee house type of artist, the Dylan type of type of music?
Tim Buckley. Kind of thing.
Yeah. Speaking of fabulous artists.
Yeah, that's Tim Buckley. That's his dad. Jeffrey's his son.
Yes.
That's crazy. A lot of people don't know that.
Yes.
That's nuts.
But Grace is such a great album.
Oh my gosh!
And when he died, I was really.
It's like the next one, Sketches from My Sweetheart. The next one that was posthumously released after he passed. Did you get that?
Yes. Well, I don't have that, but I mean,
did you listen?
Grace was released right when he drowned.
Absolutely. Then they released one more that came out. There was a double CD. It was a double.
I didn't check that out. There's a bunch of stuff.
There's a song on there it's like Prince. It seems like Prince wrote it for Jeff Buckley. It sounds exactly like Prince. It's a great album.
Yeah.
Weird eclectic stuff, but Buckley. That's how I knew Tim Buckley because of studying songwriters, and hey, this Jeff Buckley kid is Tim Buckley's son.
Yeah.
That's just a weird.
But I think when you're talking about artists that like the Janis Joplins and the Jimi Hendrix and all that, it's hard to say. did they die young? I mean, they were what, all 27?
Even the Doors, right?
Yeah, right.
Morrison, I mean,
there's a band. Well, yeah, he died so early that
Did you get the Doors?
I will say I like a handful of their music. There was a time like in the 80s where they had a resurgence, and you were on the boardwalk in Wildwood and every 10-year-old had a Doors shirt on. I'm like, what? Come on. You weren't even around, kid. Beat it. So and I think I don't, for whatever reason, and I don't remember why they became real popular again. It wasn't because of the movie, but just something happened, like stuff kind of regurgitates itself.
Well, the movie helped, I think, right?
Because
the movie was a hit.
Sure.
I just think it's really so eclectic that I just kind of missed it. Like the Grateful Dead, I get nothing from that. I respect it, just it's not my thing.
Well, is that a band you put in that top 5?
I don't. I mean, they would qualify, but do they deserve to be in that top 5?
Well, I mean, they've got a rabid fan base. Have you ever been to?
They have a cult.
You ever been to a Dead show?
Once, yes.
Yeah, I mean,
89 maybe Stadium.
Yeah, I saw them at the arena. That was just that was crazy. That was a very weird experience because there were, I was taking the DVE van down to be outside the arena.
Okay.
And we're driving through downtown Pittsburgh, and everybody's going like this. I'm like, I said to whoever was with me, is somebody jumping off the building or something like that? And that's that I need a ticket. Well, I didn't know that until I got there. Yeah. And then I remember
not a deadhead.
Walking out through the parking lot, just kind of a sense of what was going on, smelling smells I've never smelled before.
Yeah, that's a goon town there,
and like a guy with like a garden weasel saying it was his pet.
Are you kidding me?
And I'm like, whoa, dude. And people with their dogs. And I was upset because everybody had dogs. I'm like, don't leave these dogs behind, but yeah, just like people that were like lost in the 60s. And there was something kind of cool about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just like, whoa, these people are.
Some of those people aren't with us today, I'm sure. Because they were so. No, I'm saying some of their fan base that never left the 60s. They were so entrenched. They were still hanging on in the 80s and 90s, but they're probably not around.
Sure.
A lot of them.
I mean, they were doing mushrooms and peyote and all kinds of stuff. So
see, to me, it was so funny going to the show, and I think it was 89. It was after Touch of Grey, whenever that came out, 87 or 88 or
somewhere
whatever.
Around there.
And I went sober, maybe had one beer. My buddy was so into it, and it was hot. We were down on the infield, and it was just like every song sounded exactly the same.
Yeah, and everything's a long song most of the time.
Oh my gosh! And there's no punch to their music. Like it's kind of groovy, but there's no moments of like angst or there's nothing that captures and sucks me in. Right. Yeah, but I can see why you'd want to put maybe put the Grateful Dead in there. I don't know. So you're on board with Zeppelin. The
Beatles,
Rolling Stones, the Beatles, and the Who. Those 4. You're pretty solid on that.
That 5th one, though, man, that's
where it's always gets dicey.
Because like when you say going from the late 60s into the 70s, yeah, Pink Floyd, I guess I would put up there.
Yeah, it's usually Pink Floyd and Sabbath is the argument.
You put Genesis in there?
Ooh, my goodness, I've never thought about that. That's interesting. Were they that monumental early on?
No.
Yeah, that might be the qualifier. No. Because like when the Sabbath record, that's what people forget. Sabbath's first record was in '69. The first one, just Black Sabbath. That was like nothing at that time, I believe, sounded like that.
Yeah,
that was so
right. It was heavy,
and that spawned a whole different genre of guitar driven rock. Deep Purple.
I put Deep Purple in there.
Did they ever get in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame yet?
I believe so. I believe they're in.
What an injustice.
Yeah. I believe they're in.
Do you dig them?
I believe they're in. I love Richie Blackmore. Absolutely.
That's right. You told me
love
that's right.
Richie Blackmore.
Yeah. But I had this argument with my good buddy who's just like you, loves Blackmore. I mean, he plays guitar and he can play Richie Blackmore. He just loves him as a player. I still say the heaviness of that band is definitely in Ian Pace's Hammond organ.
Oh, gotcha.
I mean, that's where I think of Deep Purple. It's like the weight of it is
even
just
the beginning, dun 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 dun.
Perfect
dun,
Strangers.
Dun, dun. Yeah. I mean everything with them. I mean, that was a band that had some unique sound to it, kind of like an old basement sound. You know what I mean? Like
I get it.
with the guitar.
It was really heavy though. There's a lot of low end in that band.
Absolutely.
Which was not real prevalent in classic
Machine Head
rock.
is such a fabulous album, start to finish.
There's no question.
And
Blackmore's from another planet on his playing. I just don't think his tone is the defining thing. Eddie Van Halen defines Van Halen. That guitar tone is like poof.
Yeah.
Blackmore's more about technique and song structure, but it doesn't smack you in the face.
No. I think more Rainbow did that than Deep Purple did.
That's where he got it out. Yeah. And it was funny too, we talked about vocalists. If you want to talk specifically metal, and speaking of Rainbow, you cannot ignore Ronnie James Dio.
Absolutely.
Because that is just... Did you ever interview him?
I never interviewed him, but I did meet him.
Okay.
And by far, probably one of the most nicest guys on the world. I remember seeing him open up for, I want to say was it Twisted Sister open up for him or the other way around, and it was Dio. And it had to be Twisted Sister open up. And Dee Snider comes out and MF this and hey, F you and blah, 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 blah. And there was like a whole group of us in the far right-hand corner of the arena that were all sitting, and he was like telling us to get off our asses and stand up. And I mean, it's like, really, you can see us all the way back here? But as it turns out, Ronnie James Dio comes out, and everything is, my friends, welcome my friends. Not one swear word came out of his mouth. And I thought, good for you. And then when I met him, he was such a sweetheart. I mean, here's a guy who's been taking crap for years because of this and, the Maloik.
It's the Maloik.
Yeah. But it's
he
like...
didn't invent that.
No, but it's... Come on.
Yeah.
He couldn't been like... I mean, yes, he dressed like medieval.
That's his thing.
With his crosses and those... The bell sleeves and, those types of things. And but, I mean, that was his stage performance, but he couldn't have been nicer. Such a sweet guy. I think him and
Wendy lived in a castle in L.A. Did you know that? Their house is like a castle.
Yeah. She sold all of his stuff not too long ago.
Really?
I actually tried to buy a couple pieces of his jewelry, but it got too expensive for me.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, like some really cool cross necklaces and things, and I thought, that'd be kind of cool to have. But
what a voice, though. That voice is so... and I'm afraid that he's going to be... I just fear he's going to be forgotten over time. I mean, the music will live, but the weight of what he's done needs to be at the forefront of what that genre of music is.
Yeah.
He is the voice of heavy metal.
Yeah.
Like Tony Iommi might be the guitar riff of heavy metal, but my God. And they played in the same band for a while. Think about that.
Yeah.
Think about the guy who invented the guitar riff in heavy metal played with probably the most defining heavy metal voice ever in the same band.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see any of those Sabbath shows with Dio?
I did not.
I didn't either.
I did not. Yeah.
Like the Heaven and I would have liked to have seen it. I could have as a kid, the early stuff like the Heaven and Hell.
Mob Rules, love that
album.
Mob
Rules.
That was great.
Yeah. I was I don't know. I want to talk about classic rock right now because classic rock. What does classic rock mean? Classic rock came on my radar in the 80s when all you wonderful DJ people were talking about classic rock. We're going to have the classic rock hour, and that would then propel us to listen to stuff from the 60s. It was 20 years back, right? What is classic rock now? And 2021, what is classic rock?
I don't know. Good question. I guess it's really just what you think is classic, because depending on where you are in your age, I'm sure there are people in their 20s that think stuff that we listened to in the 80s, that The Cure is classic rock and the Smiths and Depeche Mode is classic rock. I don't know. To me, classic rock is...
the era.
Yeah, but I don't necessarily think classic rock as being the Stones and the Who and things like that. I think more classic rock being
70s, like
album like some Boston,
stuff.
Zeppelin, Bowie, that type of stuff.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I think it should be done by decades. Like this is a 70s era. This is an 80s.
Well, when you look in the 60s, most of the rock was British. So I call that British rock.
That's the British invasion.
I mean, pretty much all the bands that were doing really well.
Why couldn't we get our stuff together?
Come on, USA.
Yeah, I mean,
get it together.
What the heck? I mean, yeah.
But when you look at it, most of the stuff that we were hearing in the late 60s, early 70s, were all British bands that were doing really well. It wasn't until probably the mid 70s where we started to, rear our ugly faces with your Bostons and your Journeys and your Foreigners and those types of bands.
Yeah.
But
are you familiar with this is a quirky question, but I have to ask you because I wanted to ask you last time and I forgot. Quirky question. Put you on the spot for a second. Are you familiar with the song Achilles' Last Stand by Led Zeppelin? That long, and it was a very groundbreaking song for that era.
Right,
It was
sure.
for them, especially. I'm of the belief that the band Iron Maiden would not exist had Zeppelin not played that song. Because I think everything Iron Maiden did
sounds like that.
Came from that particular song.
That's interesting. But I think there probably are a lot of bands that, because of one band or artist or maybe a particular song, got them to. I guess when you get together, like when you talk to, let's say, Van Halen, do you say to David Lee Roth and Eddie Van Halen, who do you guys want to sound like? Is that how bands get created?
I think so. What vibe do you want? Like
prime example, Steve Perry loves Sam Cooke. And if you listen to a Sam Cooke song,
interesting,
and you listen to Steve Perry, Steve doesn't sound like Sam Cooke, but Steve certainly does his phrases, like his styling and his phrasing of how he sings songs. The whoa, that's Sam Cooke.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
the influence is there.
The influence is there. And I think some people just love that for such a long period of time that they fall into sounding like somebody like that.
Well, nothing's
but that's interesting
truly
about
original.
Achilles Stand.
Yeah, that was an amazing song as a kid. Like Zeppelin, I mean, they're an epic band, but that was a uniquely long and very multidimensional and song that was not Zeppelin-like, I thought.
Yeah.
But man, everything that they did, the structure of Maiden just seemed to come right out of that song to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm out of my mind. Probably. Okay, so we covered the classic rock. Would you agree to probably the better way to do that? If you were starting a radio station today, and you wanted to play that era of music, would you do it by decade or would you do it by terms? Like classic rock, is that even a genre?
Well, do you really think that maybe radio stations are the ones that come up with those terms? And they say you're home of classic rock, and then they determine what they think is classic rock.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
I mean, I worked at WXXP back in the mid-'80s, and we started out playing The Who, The Stones. I mean, stuff DVE wouldn't even touch. I mean, we were playing some really deep stuff from all those British bands.
Which is amazing.
Queen, David Bowie, all that stuff. And then we started implementing what back then was called modern rock, which would have been, your Depeche Modes, your Cures, the Smiths, Pill, absolutely. Those types of bands. So then we kind of backed off the Who and the Stones, but we still played Queen, we still played David Bowie, because Bowie fits in either genre.
Absolutely.
But I mean, is it the radio stations that come up with that, or
it would have to be, because it wasn't the record companies, I wouldn't think. Now, right? I mean, I don't even know if there are record companies anymore. I don't know how that whole thing works.
Yeah,
but
they're few and far between. They're still there, but there's only a couple of big ones. But I don't know if it. I guess it's just when you say modern rock. Well, now that modern rock is alternative rock, because you can still play Soundgarden, and you can still play all these bands that are on alternative rock now, but hey, you still toss in a Cure, a Smiths, a Depeche Mode, because it fits. So
the genre thing stifles me. I mean, are there even genres anymore? I mean, the one thing about the younger generation I do admire, for those who do like music in that generation, they really are not into genres. They're going to listen to what they listen to, and they really don't care
I think
what it is.
I really think that's how everybody is.
It's healthy.
Yeah. I mean, I don't. If somebody says to me, "What do you like?"
Well, how long do you have?
I like it all, and I mean, but I grew up. Like I said, with whatever my brothers and sisters listened to, but my parents listened to the standards. I love that music.
Got it.
I love Frank Sinatra and Matt Monroe and, Dean Martin and all those
Tony
guys
Bennett.
and, Keely Smith and, Louis Prima. My dad loved that stuff.
Prima.
So that's, Nat King Cole, that's the stuff I grew up on.
Right.
And I, even back as a kid, I would still look at their records and look at them and, maybe not as much information was given like in the 70s with a lot of the rock artists because, back then it was orchestras playing and they weren't giving everybody credit. So, but I mean, you call that music now the standards.
I think so. The genre thing always has puzzled me too, because that's definitely case in point. You worked at National Record Mart. When an album came in, was it classified under a certain genre? Like this is rock, this is pop, this is metal.
No, because everything was pretty much whatever came out was out. The big albums where you have, the big sellers would have their space somewhere where everybody could see them. But they were just mixed in. Hey, Prince was in the P's with Prince, and Journey was here, and New Kids on the Block were here. So it nothing was really broken down. If you were looking for something specific, yes.
Okay.
But Prince might have been in funk. Okay. Rhythm and blues, or not rhythm and blues, but funk, but might have also been in the rock style,
of course,
or pop. Just everybody. A lot of people just seem to fit into a couple different holes as far as music.
But the genres were created by the record companies, or do you think they were created by radio? The genre, the labels.
I'd imagine probably the record companies. Okay. Because when you're selling a record to a buyer, you want to make it easy when you walked into, this was back in the 80s, when you wanted to find a record in a record store and you didn't want to talk to a young punk like myself because I didn't know anything, and you're looking for the next, Harry Connick Jr. album, which he was young when he first put his first record out. But I think they have to label the store in sections so that you know what you're looking for. Okay. If somebody can't help you.
Okay. I want to talk to you about your Johnny Rotten story. I'm dying to do this, but I have to get this question out to you too. So you like U2, am I right? Mm-hmm. U2 fan. The thing I've always been puzzled about with U2 is that where they started and the political circumstance they started in over in Ireland. And their first album, or first two, had a lot of political themes to it, but yet they resonated with Americans who didn't have a flipping clue, nor did we care what was going on over there.
Right.
It's amazing to me they got that big in America. Yeah. It's amazing to me. I'm not saying they're good or bad. I'm a casual fan of U2, but it amazes me that band in particular got that big. And I think America did it for them.
Well, when I was in college, U2 was considered a Christian band. They got played on our Christian station in college radio.
That had to be their very first record, right?
Right.
They were a Christian band. Okay.
They got played because they were, I don't know how they got pigeonholed into the whole Christian thing, but that's when they got played was, during the Christian show.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's something there with that or what the deal is. Because a lot of the Christian artists that are out today, do very, very, very well.
Yeah,
I don't know how things have changed between, back in the 80s and now, but, they have a loyal fan base. So I don't know if maybe that was part of the appeal. I don't know.
Could be. That might have been their way in, maybe, into the States.
But I'll tell you, seeing them on the Joshua Tree Tour, 1987 in October, Three Rivers Stadium, that was phenomenal. That was a great show.
Band, in your opinion, what is it about that band that resonated with just Americans?
I don't know. Because when you look at it, the jingling guitar is almost the sound of every U2 song. As a guitar player,
there's a formula.
You know that.
Oh, the edge is something.
Yeah.
He's not a virtuosic player.
No.
A virtuosity there, but he's got his thing.
Yeah, and it works. And I think a lot of times the songs of being positive, and they always seem to have a cause. And I think there's just maybe that time in your life where you're looking for that. You're gravitating towards some positive music or a band that cares about more than just themselves, or they're trying to help or make something aware of something going on somewhere in the world, whatever it is. I think there's just people that gravitate towards that, and there's just people that just like the music, you know?
Yeah, and the music is undeniable.
Yeah.
It definitely is.
Yeah,
and
but I mean, but after the Joshua Tree tour, I mean, some of the tours they had were just mind-blowing.
Yeah.
What they had on stage.
The theatrics,
gigantic
and inflatables and things and crazy.
Cocktail glass with a big olive in it and stuff like that. And I mean, it's it's hard to say why any band blows up, but they obviously have done something right.
Well, yeah, if you could figure that out, you'd make a lot of money.
When I first heard them, I heard them on a Christian station. That's interesting. That was my first introduction to U2.
Were you hooked initially, or did you have to warm up to them?
I like them. I thought there was, but then nobody was doing that. I'm sorry, the jangly guitar.
No, you're right. You're right.
Nobody was doing that at the time, so it sounded different. You know. Yeah,
the edges. And certainly Bono's voice and vocals, that's undeniable, the stories in those songs. But, man, you cannot deny that their music is, that formula. The Edge has to get a lot of credit for designing that band.
Absolutely.
I don't think he does.
No.
I think he's happy in the background.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. He seems like a shy kind of guy, you know.
You ever meet any of them?
Yes. Larry and Adam.
Wow.
Yeah, when they came to tour at the stadium, God, I can't remember what year this was. This was back in the maybe early 90s. Paul McGuinness was their tour manager.
Okay.
And when DVE would do these arena shows, it was every man had a purpose. Every jock was, you know, Michelle's out in the parking lot. The morning show's doing something. You know, whoever's doing the afternoon at that time, Hirsch or Sean's doing something. I was inside, you know, running, you know, getting information to people and things, or, you know, it was every all hands on deck. And we had the balloons up, the station balloons. And I mean, it was like an all day broadcast. I think we started like maybe 3:00 in the afternoon or
that was
2
an event
or something. So it was an event. Yeah. And myself and Anthony Alfonsi, who was our promotions director, we ended up going backstage, take some winners backstage or whatever. And Paul McGuinness pulls us aside and says, I just want to tell you, I have never seen a radio station promote a show like you guys did. He goes, from the time we got in the airport and turned the radio on, and then listening today, you know, we were listening and all this stuff. And it's like, wow, thank you. And he says, you guys really need to be. That's cool. You know, we tip our hat to you because you guys really blew it out of the park.
It's very cool.
So it's cool that somebody actually pays attention.
Right on.
And then you have somebody like Mick Jagger. I meet him, Anthony and I take some winners backstage, and Mick says to me, are you the music director? And I said, yes, I am. And he goes, can I talk to you for a second? And I'm like, oh my God, Mick Jagger wants to talk to me. So Anthony comes with me. He goes, can I talk to the both of you? He pulls us aside and is asking me how many spins this song's getting off Steel Wheels, and how many spins did it get last week? Is it going up or is it going down?
I totally believe it.
I mean, he's an economics major.
I know, he's into it.
But I'm just like, there's a part of me that I'm telling him everything I know. And, you know, obviously the record got a lot of airplay.
Steel Wheels is a good record.
Yeah. But I'm thinking to myself while I'm talking to him and smiling, I'm like, why do you care? You're making millions of dollars. The place is sold out. Why do you give a rat's patootie that, you know, if you know, Mixed Emotions is getting 30 spins this week and it was only 22 last week or whatever. I was just like, wow, dude. But he cared. He cared. And I thought, that's pretty cool. I mean, Anthony and I walked away and we're like, whoa, Mick Jagger just kind of grilled us, so to speak.
That is so cool, though.
I mean, yeah, he cared.
I'd love to meet him.
He cared. And I was like, wow, okay, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So when you don't think artists are listening or whatever, or when you post something nowadays, it's more of the social media or whatever. When an artist likes something or replies to something, that's pretty cool.
No doubt.
And I wish more bands would realize that, you know, especially if they run their own pages. And a lot of them do.
Yeah.
I mean, but when you make a comment or you tag something,
it means the world to freaking people. You know what I mean?
Especially now when fans can't get out there and see you.
I know.
I will never forget. I was new to Twitter. And the Pirates were in the playoffs, and they hadn't been in the playoffs in God knows how long, years, since 1992. So this was about maybe 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah, 2013 or 14, something.
Yeah,
like that.
somewhere around there. So I'm new to Twitter, And, I dabble a little bit in. I know you don't like it. I think it's hysterical. I think people are so funny on Twitter. Okay. But anyway, so I see this kid who's got a Kiss t-shirt on, and it's the Kiss members dressed up as pirate players.
Yeah, I have that.
So I took a snapshot of it, and I put it out on Twitter and just said something like, "Whoa, you better watch. Gene Simmons is on to you. He's going to want to take this." And wouldn't you know, Gene Simmons replies directly to me, and the Pirates were tagged in it, and says, "Don't you worry your pretty little head. We have a deal with all the Major League Baseball teams," or whatever it was. And I thought, that is pretty darn cool.
Yeah. And think about that. Didn't take him any time, but the goodwill that gives and how he touches all these. And
I thought, Gene, you're a pretty cool guy. I mean, I like him. I loved his show and all that stuff. Gene. But when somebody replies or likes something, I mean, I think, nowadays when you don't have that ability to be out on tour and you don't have that ability to do and meet and greet and all that stuff. And I mean, I'm not saying anything negative, but when somebody loops you in or tags you in and at least like it, imagine that makes somebody's day.
You mentioned, I think, about Jagger, and it just jogged a memory of mine too, that a couple of years in working with Washburn, doing guitars, and then working with Paul, I was amazed at how much he was involved with not just the design of what the thing looked like, but how many units we're removing. What's the price point? I remember him saying to me, "Eric, I like what you're doing because you're creating guitars in a certain price point, and there's never been anything to fill the gap for these kind of fans." And he was so, really into it. It made my job easier, too.
Nobody, if you don't care about your fans, you're not going to last as long as a Kiss does.
Yeah.
If you don't care about how many spins your record's getting, you're not going to be as you won't have the longevity as the Rolling Stones.
Yeah, you got to mind your business. Like you got to mind your business. You got to tend to it.
Well, I mean, look at how many artists have been screwed over.
And I think all those probably have in periods of time.
Oh,
they've
absolutely.
learned.
But I mean, like Billy Joel. I mean, he has his former brother-in-law be his manager, and he robbed him blind. That type of thing. Do you have to lose millions of dollars to learn a lesson?
Yeah.
No, I just think you need to be hands-on.
Yeah. Talking about losing money, bands often lose money on tours. I don't know about it anymore, but they used to because they try to outdo each other on stage shows. And I've heard some crazy stories about bands really taking it on the chin, doing this crazy tour, and at the end of it, you're exhausted and you find out you haven't made any money.
Right.
Because you're, as a rock fan, and I'm not talking about your years as in radio, but before that, as a fan of music, before you were in the business, how much did the stage show mean to you when you went and saw an act, or was it really about the music to you?
I think a lot of it depends on who the band is.
Okay.
I mean, for example, if I'm going to see Chicago, I'm there for the music. I don't need pyrotechnics or anything like that.
Yeah.
Because that's not what Chicago is. But if you have somebody that's more of a theatrical type of band, then maybe you do.
Like Queen or Rush or something.
Yeah, you do expect something a little bit more. Rush was never really crazy with anything they did. I mean,
complimented. They always would put out something that complimented what they would do.
I remember the tour with the washing machines.
Yeah, I loved it. And the next time was a roaster. Remember the roaster?
So you had those types of things. But sometimes is a large stage show or with a lot of flash, boom, bang, is that covering for something else? I think that you're paying more attention to that. Oh, absolutely.
They're covering for their musical ineptitude.
Right. And I'm not saying that Motley Crue is horrible. Love them. But, there comes a time where Neil's voice hasn't been good in a long time.
Neither has his waistline.
Yes,
to be honest with you.
And that was one tour last year. I was really disappointed because of this. It didn't happen. You
thought it was actually going to happen? You think it was going to happen? See, I didn't believe it was going to happen. It did not.
Oh, that tour sold out. Oh, it was happening. It was happening come hell or high water because there was a lot of money on the line for that. So,
have you seen Vince Neil?
Well, he was, but he was dieting and he did get thinner.
Have you seen Vince Neil?
No, I haven't seen him lately.
During the pandemic, has anyone seen Vince Neil?
Oh, not during the pandemic. I mean, I'm talking about
the leading up
to that August show.
Well, so there were some fake photos out there too of him getting all muscular and everything too.
Right.
Those weren't real.
But I mean, there were other guys on the bill too.
There was.
I mean, and you kind of take a Motley Crue show as a Motley Crue show.
You know what you're getting.
Your expectations aren't really high. It's like they could be good, They might not be. You know? But hey, I'm there to see Def Leppard too, and I'm there to see Poison, and I'm there to see Joan Jett. So, you know, but there was a lot of money riding on that tour. That tour sold out really fast. Well,
it's a stacked bill.
Completely, but
it's a stacked bill.
Yeah.
I mean, and those are some pretty.
They sold
weighty,
35,000 tickets just like in the first day or two.
There's some pretty
here in
weighty,
Pittsburgh.
some pretty weighty acts below that
Sure.
one. That one, that's going to hold their own.
And honestly, I think maybe that's the way it's going to have to be for a while. Maybe getting some a tour like that to get people comfortable enough
of them, yeah,
to be, you know, to
Good
come
point.
out and do something like that. Where
Good point.
I don't think it's going to be, you know, Def Leppard with Joe Schmo and the Kokomo's. You know, it's I think probably in the beginning it's going to have to be some heavy hitters
to fill the place.
Yeah,
and that's simply because there's going to be a part of the population for a period of time that's going to be uneasy about mingling.
Sure, absolutely.
You got to tell me the Johnny Rotten story. You got to tell me.
Oh, well, I was working at WX. I was doing middays. It was kind of new to middays. And music director comes and says, hey, you know, we have an interview to do with Johnny Rotten. He's going to call in. I'm like, I mean, this is, the guy terrified me. Honestly, I'll be brutally honest. And I was like, oh my God, I was a nervous wreck. I don't get nervous meeting people or interviewing people. But with him, I mean, I interviewed Bowie.
Yeah. I know you did.
That was a last minute, hey, you got to do the interview kind of thing.
And look how good your experience was coming out of that.
But I had no prep.
That's why it was great.
But I'm a huge fan.
That's why it was great.
You know, so it worked.
It sure did.
But I was like, he's nasty, he's mean.
Oh, that was the thing that was the line on Bowie? I didn't know that.
No.
Oh,
with Johnny Rotten. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So you're rolling your eyes. I'm like, well, yeah. So I'm like, oh my God.
Depends if he has beer or not.
Well, he's over in England or wherever. I'm like, I have no idea. Okay. We didn't tape interviews when you were live. So it's
this would have been late 80s, mid 80s? Because he
mid-80s.
was ornery then, man. Like
what was the
ornery.
album? It was the Pill album, the white one.
Album. It just says album on the front. It's white. Is that the one with Steve Vai and
I can't remember
Ginger
now.
Baker? They guest starred on that record.
I don't think it was that one.
There's one called Happy.
Happy. That's what it was, Happy. And so, I mean, we were playing the crap out of it, so he should have been happy about that. So I was like, oh my God. And I was like, before we...
This is not a love song.
Right. But before we went on the air, and I was in a commercial, I said, okay, this is a commercial break. We're going to go live. I said, and he was kind of like, you know, and I was like, okay, a couple seconds, then we'll be on, and I really appreciate you calling in, blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, introduced him, and he could not have been nicer.
Really?
And I told him, I said, listen, I am nervous. And he goes, you shouldn't be nervous. Why? And I'm like, well, because you're Johnny Rotten? I don't know. And he ended up being so kind and so respectful and just, wow. He was really cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
I mean, little curmudgeon-y here and there, but with the questions I was asking, it was appropriate, you know? But, I was honestly, that's out of everybody I've ever interviewed, that was probably the one person that I was most terrified.
Because the rumor was he was just
because of
the Pistols, or because of
what? Of that, and just because, I mean, you have a picture above your head, he just looks angry on stage, and he was just like an angry British guy, you know, and it was I can't explain.
Bad teeth.
Don't they all? But I mean,
good.
It was
good.
I don't know. Out of everybody I've ever interviewed, I was terrified to interview him, just because of all the stories you heard of him and the rumors and this and that, and even back then there was no internet, so it wasn't like it was stuff you were reading online.
Oh yeah.
It was people that you knew that worked with him in New York
you
or whatever.
You couldn't get any factual information; it was just things you heard.
Right, and the stories of them, trash and hotel rooms and the drugs and all that stuff, and you know he terrified me, but he ended up being such a nice guy, and I apologize that I felt that way about him, you know, because then you get some people, honestly, this has been my experience,
right?
The smaller the band, the bigger the jerks.
I believe that
the larger the band, the nicer they are. You meet Aerosmith, could not have been nicer.
Yeah.
David Bowie could not have, such a classy guy.
Well, they're in a different place in their lives too, right? Because money hopefully brought them comfort, and they're used to a certain lifestyle, and
Sure, but this is different parts of the 80s too, and
point.
early 90s.
Good point. Okay.
So, and some were trying to reinvent themselves and doing the solo. Yeah, I mean, who thought Aerosmith would come back bigger than they were in the 70s?
Yeah, no, Run DMC and them. I never forget that.
But I mean, there's just some of the bigger the bands, it always seemed like they were just like the coolest people. They really, very, very, maybe it's because they've already had that taste of fame, and it was just like, hey, we don't need to be jerks to people. We are who we are.
We did that prior.
Possibly, I don't know. But I mean, some of the up and coming bands were bigger jerks, and a lot of times when you interviewed them or when I dealt with them, it was like, you were a little bit more apprehensive about them because you thought they might have an attitude.
What was the worst interview you ever had?
The worst interview? Oh, jeez.
If you got multiples, you have multiples. That's great.
I do. The one that sticks out was, it wasn't necessarily a bad interview. It just got ugly. And that was, okay. I was the music director at DVE.
All right.
And Big Head Todd and the Monsters were coming over they were playing in town. And they came on the air, and I was on the air that day. And I worked it out with the music director. They were going to come by. They were going to play their hit. And, pimp the show, whatever.
Right.
Very quick, and then they leave. Record rep was with them, was going to accompany them to the studios, stuff like that. We're all good. Engineer comes in, gets them all hooked up. So we're on the air, we're talking, and I said, what are you going to play for us? And I made sure the record rep knew they were going to play whatever the song was.
Of course.
Bittersweet or something like that. I can't remember the name of the song. So he says, we're going to play our new one.
Threw a curveball to you.
Yes. And I guess he thought I was just going to let it roll. And I said, you know what? I said, before we get into that, let's take a commercial break so we get the commercials out of the way so we can even chat a little bit more. He's like, okay, cool, fine. I get into commercial break. I said, can you give me 1 second? I walk out the air studio, drag the record rep down the hall, and I'm like, listen, they're playing one song, and their one song is their hit. That's what we agreed upon. And he was like, oh, come on. I said, don't throw me under the bus like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I came back in and I said, you guys are playing your hit. And that's it. I'll talk a little bit more, but that's it. I mean, it was a Sunday afternoon and there was nobody there. And I'm juggling the band and being on the air and all this stuff by myself, except for the engineer helping out. And I was just like, now I'm pissed. Come back on the air and my hands I'm like, Urgh. So, but yeah.
But did he capitulate? He did the right thing?
Oh, yeah, they played the hit. But then they, angrily packed up their stuff and just left. So.
What would you have done if they would have gone into that other song? At that moment, what would you have done? Could you have done anything?
Well, I don't know. If they've already started playing it, I'm done, but that's the only song they're playing. They're not playing their hit. I mean, they're a fairly new band, especially in Pittsburgh. You're trying to get people to come to the show.
Leeway.
No,
they're calling the shots.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it was the band's fault.
Yeah.
Maybe the band threw the record rep a curve, or maybe the record rep said, you know what, just go ahead and do it. See what she's not going to do anything. Oh, really? Well, you don't.
They didn't know who they were fooling with.
Yeah, you don't mess with me when it comes to that kind of stuff because it's my job. And my responsibility was to get them on the air, talk a little bit about the show, how things are going.
They should be appreciative of that at media
exactly.
time,
And that's what I mean. Sometimes the younger bands, and like I said, I don't know if that was their decision or the record rep's decision, but it happened and I stopped it.
Give me another bad one. Or awkward one.
Oh, my. I haven't had really too many.
That's good.
Too many, no. I mean, I try to look at things as like everything's a lesson and everything's a learning curve.
Okay.
So, here's a good one. Alice in Chains come to the station. I'm on for Michelle.
Okay.
It's July. They're opening up for Van Halen.
This is before when Lane was still around.
Yes, Lane was still around.
Okay.
It is 95 degrees outside. So he comes in with the guitar player.
Oh, Jerry Cantrell.
I believe it was just the two of them. Lane has on a wool cap, a big army jacket, fatigues, the big boots. I mean, I'm sweating just looking at him. And he has gloves with his fingers cut out. And so I'm like, hey, guys, Alice in Chains are here with us. Thanks so much for coming by, playing with Van Halen tonight. How cool. How long you been on the tour? Lane, been out for a couple months. Jerry was okay, but Lane was really, I think Lane was supposed to talk and Jerry was there as a security blanket. To make him feel comfortable that hey, it's cool. And I always, I never dragged anybody just on the air. Always made sure that I put a long song on, went out and just talked, make him feel comfortable. Absolutely. Hey, can I get you something to drink? Whatever.
Right.
It was yes, no answers. Well, one thing I know is I don't drag out an interview when I'm not getting any kind of, oh yeah. So I was like, well, you know what, guys, I know you have to get to the venue. You got to get,
so good.
I know you load in time. I'm like looking at my watch, load in times, whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, get me out of here. So cool. They left. So I leave the show. I go out to Star Lake. Now I'm doing the broadcast out at Star Lake.
Okay.
So a couple minutes later, we're doing, hey, Cris Winter, we're out here at the mall, blah, blah, blah. We're, here at the venue and, Van Halen and Alice in Chains. And even the engineer's like, wow, how did you get through that today? And I'm like, I don't know, but it happened. So the next thing I know, here comes one of the guys from Star Lake in a golf cart with Lane Staley. And Lane is completely different. Really nice and overly talkative and friendly, and he came up and he thanked me for having him on the air and just, hey, thanks for the interview today and all this stuff. And the engineer's like behind my head or behind his head, and he's like, what? And I'm like, I don't know, but
there had to be some kind of chemical involved with that reaction.
Yeah, well, what happened to him, I'm sure that's probably what it was, but it was just like night and day.
Wow.
And I was just like, dude, why couldn't you have been like this today?
Yeah.
Well, obviously he was, I'm not saying what happened to him. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't want to start rumors, but it was just like, it was night and day.
Mm-hmm.
It was one word answers, and I was, help me.
Oh my gosh.
I'm floundering.
What an awkward situation.
It is, and it happens, and but
Cantrell was supposed to be pretty curmudgeon early in his career, probably around that time.
Right.
And he got clean. I think he's
he wasn't exactly Mr. Talkative either, but I think like I said, I kind of, my personal feeling was that he was there as a security blanket to make sure that Lane felt comfortable and Lane would talk, but I mean, he had sunglasses on. I couldn't see his eyes, so I didn't know what, if he had his eyes shut. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But when he rolled up in the golf cart, he was, hey, Cris, thanks so much. We really appreciate it. And I'm like, where were you today about, I don't know, 1:00, But they came out and they played. They were awesome.
Yeah,
they played.
there's
fantastic.
something. They were a force.
Yeah.
And they still are a force. Yeah. But that was, did you ever interview Billy Squier?
No.
Did you ever hear any stories about Billy Squier? He was supposed to be one ornery son of a gun.
Well, he did do the charity jam for DVE. I didn't interview him, saw him, said hi to him, that kind of thing. Yeah, He came into town for the charity jam years ago. This was maybe late 80s.
What was funny to me was I ran into, I think it was Tom Zutaut 2 decades ago. And I befriended Tom. He's the gentleman who found Guns N' Roses. He was the A&R guy for Geffen Records, and then Motley Crue. He's in the movie, Motley Crue movie.
The Dirt.
Someone plays him.
Yeah.
Tom Zutaut. And Tom told me that, not a specific story about Squier, but he used Billy Squier as an example of the way the things would work. They would get, an artist would get some publicity, they would get on a run, they get on a roll, and they believe their own bullshit and incorrigible. They can get that way sometimes. Mm-hmm. And that's where Squier got that reputation. But then as the career would wane a little bit, amazingly, when they're struggling to hold on, they seem like they find their manners.
Yeah.
And they become a nicer, more approachable person.
Right. Yeah.
And that's kind of what Tom had indicated to me.
I remember him, as I recall, with the charity jam, he had demands, or he had some things that he had to have, and that's fine. I don't remember him being like overly friendly with people and stuff like that.
Okay.
But I I love his music.
Yeah, he had a moment.
Yeah, well, he was huge there for a while.
He got killed. I think the video killed him. Right, the Rockin' Tonight with the satin sheets or whatever it was.
He shaved his underarms.
Wait, I didn't know that part.
I think he shaved his underarms for that.
Oh, I did not know that.
He's rock me tonight.
I gotta go back and watch that.
Yeah,
now.
I'm almost positive. I guess I don't know why when I think that, that's what I think. I think he shaved his underarms. Who cares? I loved him. I mean, Trick of the Tail is such a great album, and or Tail of the Tape. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Motions in Motion. I mean, that was college for me. That he was college radio for me. But yeah, I've seen him quite a few times in concert. But there's a guy who's completely fallen off the face of the earth. I mean, you don't even hear anything about him anymore. You don't see anything about him anymore.
I read an article a long time ago, and I think in a financial magazine, believe it or not, maybe a decade or two ago, where he had done really well. Like he had invested his money right, and he had a couple investment properties in New York City. He was living in Manhattan, and so things were okay with him.
Yeah,
he just kind of,
Well, and then there's just some of those people that just rumors and your lifestyle or your rumors become bigger than what your accomplishments are as a musician or an actor or whatever, and then some people just get fed up with it and just like, you know what, I don't need the hassle. I don't need the grief with it. But that's a shame because he was so I liked him a lot.
Yeah,
he was very
he was a good
talented
guitar player.
Yeah.
He wrote a great hook. I mean, Lonely is the Night, and you hear that song, it's like, wow.
The Stroke, come on, or just his Christmas song. That's probably one of my favorite Christmas songs that's non-traditional.
I would agree.
Christmas is a time to sail. I mean, just it's fun. It's people. It kind of reminds me of the Beach Boys' Barbara Ann, with the people clapping and singing and
Isn't there a video with him and the guys from Def Leppard and doing a
no? I know he did
that song.
He did that with all the guys people from MTV.
Maybe that was. I thought
with all the staff that were on MTV at the time.
Okay, maybe that's what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
My mother used to say, well, because I have a very hip mom, but she had Zeppelin and all this stuff, and she would say, she heard Billy Squier, she goes, "Oh, honey, that's just the poor man's Robert Plant." And she said this to me in like the early age, just crushed my spirit.
Well,
like,
sure.
What are you talking about, poor man's Robert Plant? That's Billy Squier. And she goes, "Honey, that's just the poor man's Robert Plant."
Wow, that's interesting.
And I go,
that's interesting.
And that's what she heard.
Yeah.
And when she would hear him, that's kind of what she heard. And I'm like, I don't get the Robert Plant connection there, but if you say that's what Robert Plant, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but yeah, there's just some artists, just people that have fallen off the radar, and it's sad for no reason. I mean, like, yes, Rush will probably never ever tour again, but there's good reason for that.
There's rumblings that something's going on.
Really?
Maybe they want to make some music again. It'll be different. It might not be Rush.
Yeah, but you cannot replace Neil Peart. You just can't.
Not in the same format. No.
I don't care if you got somebody who played exactly like. I mean, that guy was just. I called him the octopus because he was just, he seemed like Stretch Armstrong, Gumby, whatever you want to call him, the way he drummed. And I enjoyed going to Rush shows to watch him play.
Oh, there's no,
that
band's effect on my life, and then Peart, me playing drums before I ever played guitar, and that connection and being amazed by that. When he passed, I did not believe it. And that was right before, it was last January.
Mm-hmm.
It took me like a month or two to get that out, like to work myself past that. It sounds corny, but it really was like I was really like emotionally kind of screwed up for a while.
Well,
there.
you knew it's the same. It's kind of the same thing like Bowie. Nobody knew Bowie had cancer.
Right.
Although Rod Stewart did make a comment on Howard Stern that he wasn't doing well, and my husband caught that and was like,
"Huh."
And then he called me up and he goes, "Hey, Rod Stewart just said on,"
That's
and then he I guess realized what he said, because Howard's very good at just dragging things out of people.
He's the master.
But there's no time restraints like it is when you're on real radio and you have 5 minutes to interview somebody.
Right.
But he made that comment, and I think when he realized it, he kind of skirted the thing. But when that happened, I mean, I was crushed. I was just ready to go on the air. It was. It was a Monday morning.
Wow.
And I was looking at stuff on the wire, and it said the Prime Minister of England shares his thoughts about David Bowie, and I'm like, what's this about? And he just had his birthday. Black Star had just come out that weekend. I watched it on Friday night, and it was the video for his new record, Lazarus, and it was. I kept saying to my husband, says, he looks so old. And it kind of like that kind of bothered me. I was like, oh man, my guy's getting old, because he always was so stylish and all this stuff. But then here, saw that in the morning, get to work, it's 4:00 in the morning, getting my stuff together. And then I see the death of David Bowie, and I'm like, what? Yeah. And I'm like, refresh. And I'm like, I'm starting to hyperventilate because I was like, no. And I called my husband, and he was like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, blah. And he says, what? I'm like, David Bowie died. And he goes, what? And I said, David Bowie died. And he was like, you're kidding me. And I said, no. But they said he had been sick, but
he wanted his privacy.
Right then and there, you had no idea what it was. Exactly. I'm thinking lung cancer because he was a lifelong smoker. Mm-hmm. That's what I thought. Mm-hmm. But I'm sitting in the studio on the floor sobbing, and my husband's like, hang up the phone, get your shit together because you got to go on the air. So I was, and I said, this is really tough.
I totally get it.
I said, this is totally, I said, I've loved this guy since I was a kid. I had my hair cut like him. I named my dog after him. I mean, my life revolved around him since I was little.
Right on.
And, do I know all of his songs? No, but I loved him for always just being different and always coloring outside the lines and just always changing himself.
Way of playing that. That's
always
good.
Changing himself. And that's what I loved about him. And,
he wrote his own rules.
Oh, yeah.
He just didn't care.
By 6:00, my phone is blowing up.
I bet.
Friends, relatives, oh my God, are you okay? And I'm like, I had to get on that. My makeup's all off my face. I'm like, oh man, yeah, that was a tough one. So when Neil Peart, it was the same way. Like you knew there was that he had cancer, but with Bowie, you didn't hear anything.
Yeah,
and he was working on this play and all that stuff. So you kind of thought, okay, I know he said he would never tour again, had a heart attack and things like that. So he said he thought he was pretty much done with touring. So I'm so glad that I got to see him at
you had that moment. You had that interview.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah. I've met him a couple times, but to see him play the last show he did was at the Benedum.
Is there someone you wanted to interview or meet that you have not? There's still time if they're living, but I'm saying that somebody that you missed the opportunity.
Oh, wow. I don't know. Good question.
Well, like, have you ever met Elton John?
Yes.
You have? Wow. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
How'd that go?
Oh, fabulous. He was such a nice guy. At the time, we knew a limo driver who did a lot of the shows for Star Lake.
Okay.
And he picked Elton John up this was the tour after Freddie Mercury had died.
Okay.
So at the end of the show, Elton did a bunch of Queen songs.
Maybe like 92 or so.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So he's doing these Queen songs, and I was just like, oh.
Right.
Was fabulous.
Right.
So after the shows were over, I always called back to the radio station, and I did a couple of, kind of a post-show review or, hey, what they played or whatever, or if there anything crazy happened. So I talked about what a stunning tribute to Freddie Mercury. I mean, he, and I it was from the heart. I didn't write anything down. Just I mentioned a couple of songs he played. Well, this friend of mine who's the limo driver has Elton John and his friend, his partner, in the back of the limo, and he's like, turn it up. And he heard me say these things. And the limo driver, Elton says, you know who this person is? And he goes, well, yeah, I know who she is. And he goes, I'd like to send her something. So the limo, I don't know nothing about this. So the limo driver calls me like it was like 2 days later or something like that. He goes, I have the weirdest story I want to tell you. And I'm like, okay. And he said, I had Elton John in my car after the show. He goes, and he heard your post-show review or whatever you want to call it. I'm like, really? I'm like, oh no. And he said he was very, very taken by what you said, especially about Freddie Mercury. And I'm like, oh wow. And he said, he wanted to send you something. He goes, I don't know what. I gave him the radio station's address, so if you get something from Elton John, I never did, but it was just, again, nice to know that you don't think these people listen. They do.
Yeah,
they do.
Obviously so.
You got Mick Jagger pulling me aside talking about, spins on records, and then you've got Paul McGuinness from U2 saying, hey, never saw a radio station knock a show out like you guys did.
That is insane.
I mean, you don't think anything, but it does happen, so.
What about Rod Stewart? He played Pittsburgh quite a bit.
I sang with Rod Stewart.
Wait, what?
I sang with Rod Stewart.
Oh, how did we not go there?
Yeah, I did that.
How'd that happen?
Money and Cigarettes, that tour.
Okay.
We did a thing where he wanted to have some backup singers. So we did a little thing on the morning show that we had girls come in or guys come in and you had to sing a Rod Stewart song. And then I think we had some people from, like, I think Ken Rice from KDK.
Okay.
And Jennifer Ankoviak, I think at the time, came in and they were like our guest judges.
Okay.
So I had to be the person that takes them up on stage to be sure that they didn't mug. I was background singer / security.
Got it.
So this girl named Leslie ends up winning, and we went up to the show that day, and they had us sing one song, and then they decided to change like a couple days prior to. So what is it? Bitches keep bitching, snitchers keep snitching. I can't remember the name of the song, but it was off Money and Cigarettes.
Right.
And so they, I remember it was so freaking hot outside. It was like boiling hot, like real humid and stuff. So we came out and we're at our microphones, and Rod Stewart's to my right and Leslie's to my left, and he introduced us or whatever, and then we sang background on, and he came between us and was singing with us and stuff. And
how about that?
Yeah, it was very cool. Very cool. I was the envy of a lot of ladies, let me tell you, but it was fun.
Wow. And he's still going, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is he doing rock stuff now, or is he doing more big band stuff?
He's doing more of the standards, big band standards, whatever you might call it. Yeah.
Oh, well, okay.
I think the last couple records he's done has been like that.
Is he 75, 76
years old?
Yeah,
he's 76, I think. I think he turned 70. Yeah, he's 76. His birthday's in January, so I think he just turned 76. I'll tell you what, though. He is the most stylish,
I bet,
elderly guy I've ever seen. I mean, there is a man who really knows how he's a fashion plate. He really is. I mean, just how he dresses. You would never know.
He always did.
You never know he's 76 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, of course he's Rod Stewart. So you there's a little bit, it's not like, your neighbor down the street, but man, is he fashionable. I mean, just some of the clothes. Go online and just Google like him lately.
He's into it.
Wow. It's like colors and just amazing.
Page and Plant, did you interview either one of them?
No. Can't remember if I interviewed them. I've met Robert Plant twice, and I met Jimmy Page once.
How did all that go?
Oh, fine. I just wanted a picture with Robert Plant the worst way.
Of course.
But there were some artists that were like, I will sign anything you'd like, but no pictures. Like the first time I met David Bowie, no pictures. Okay. So I was really disappointed by that.
Said that one you did on the slides you walked by, right?
Well, those photos never came out, though. It wasn't until he came back with 9 Inch Nails that I got a photo with him. So I was happy.
Got it.
But yeah, with Robert Plant, he wouldn't let photos. So I did get a poster
Jimmy?
Autographed. At this point, that was the Miller Lite tour that they did.
Yeah.
What was that, 95, I think it was?
They did 95 and 97.
I think this was the 95
one.
Okay,
the first one.
Yeah, so I forget why I was backstage. But I was. And I had a clipboard. If you want some real advice, go anywhere with a clipboard. People let you go right through. Yeah, absolutely. But I was back there for something, and I can't remember what it was. I don't think Sean interviewed them. Sean and I did the outside pre-show thing together.
Okay.
And but yeah, I mean, just a quick hi, how you guys doing? Whatever. I don't know if I maybe it had been taking them backstage to meet somebody. That's cool. A listener, but yeah, very nice. I mean, just some of those are really quick, but Robert Plant was always very sweet. I remember there was we did a promotion where we let somebody go to Cleveland to see Robert Plant. We limoed them to Cleveland to see Robert Plant,
or something, right?
And then they flew back on his plane, his private jet. And then he played in Pittsburgh.
That's cool.
I'm like, how cool is that?
That's unbelievable.
How cool is that?
That's
and that's
when you
the sad part about music anymore. There is none of that stuff because there are no record labels. Nobody wants to put the money out for anything. So really, bands have to be pretty savvy in how they present themselves. And
were you at DVE when Sabbath the reunion like in '97? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you guys promote that show for sure? So any interaction with them?
No. Mm-mm.
Huh?
No.
Were they the kind of band that would permit that? Because I heard Iommi's real standoffish and he doesn't really do press.
It could have been. I mean, sometimes artists will only do radio interviews over the radio, over a phone, that type of thing. Not a live interview. So when they come to town,
they're not accessible to the media. That happens then.
It all depends on who the band is, really. Huh. I mean, like that same tour with Alice in Chains and Van Halen. I was there with the engineer. I was supposed to interview somebody from Van Halen.
Didn't happen.
And I'm waiting. And I'm like, okay, it's getting late. It's not going to happen. Then next thing you know, golf cart comes up again. If you want to interview Michael Anthony, let's go. I'm like, oh. So I'm like, okay.
Very cool.
Grab the engineer, had everything ready to go, and it took him lickety split to set it up. And
got it.
And yeah, we were able to do the interview. So that worked out pretty well. But I think a lot of times it just depends on the artist. And there's a lot of times they have people that do the dirty work for them.
Okay.
That will say, no, absolutely not. And a lot of times it never goes to the band or it never goes to the artist.
Got it.
The
gatekeeper.
Yeah, exactly. And I realize, that's for their own protection and all that. But there are a lot of times where bands are just, sometimes they get that opportunity and they're really excited to do it.
Right.
It's like, this is kind of cool. But then there's those times where, they have a bad day or whatever. And I always, if I meet somebody who's not really nice or has been kind of, hey, we all have bad days. I don't,
Yeah, I know you can't, and I'm sure most fans do. They judge somebody's entire life based upon one interaction with them.
Right, right.
And that was
now. With the VIP things, if you're spending $1,000 to meet,
they better be nice to you.
They better, yeah. I mean, somebody's spending their hard-earned money to meet you. You better be either that or refund their money if you're not going to be nice, because that's the worst. That's the worst.
Yeah, and that's where me being close to Kiss, I saw a couple of those tours during the years I worked, and it was amazing to me. I saw when they first started in 2009. They were at the Civic Arena, one of the last shows at the arena, rock shows, but it was December of 2009, and they were just starting to do these meet and greets. And I had a VIP pass with Paul, so I'm hanging out watching this happen, and I'm starting to count heads. Like, wow, that's like a lot of money.
Sure.
At that time, it was only $500 a person.
Yeah.
I'm going, they're really making some dough here, but the gatekeeper thing is a phenomenon because. One of the most thrilling moments I had, Chris, was I was in Pittsburgh for one of those Kiss shows, and I'm in just catering, which is like the crew, and it's nothing special about it. And there, Stanley comes over and taps me on his shoulder and goes, "Hey, how you doing?" I'm like, and the group I was with was like, I'm like, "Hey, Paul, how are you?" He goes, "You have a couple minutes?" So he takes me back to his dressing room, and I sit and BS with him about stuff we were doing together. Right. But the gatekeeper thing is there because I walked past 3 or 4 people. And they gave me this look like I was the devil. Right. Meanwhile, he's bringing me back there. So I was like, wow, you're really locked down here. I was amazed at how inaccessible they were, really.
Some are and some aren't. I mean, there's times Peter Frampton came to the radio station at DVE on a Saturday, and he was by himself, just him and his manager.
Wow.
No, they pulled up. Actually, my husband picked them up in a car, brought them to the radio station, and he's asking my husband, hey, where can I wash my clothes? Is there a laundromat anywhere by?
Insane.
And my husband's like, my wife will be more than happy to wash your clothes for you,
That is insane.
But it was, he was like, oh, I remember being at this down in Station Square, what used to be the sushi place in Station Square, because that was some of the best sushi I ever had. But it was just him and his manager.
Wow.
And they came to the station, and he was there for a long time. He was on the air with Hirsch, and then we chatted in the production studio for a long time. And
and he did that second live album, because I followed Frampton pretty well, even through the leaner years. I can't even tell you
what album this was. It was probably...
There's one, Frampton Comes Alive 2. He put a second live album out.
No, this was before that.
Okay.
This was off a studio record, or maybe he was just doing a tour just to do a tour. Maybe he wasn't promoting anything. He played down at Rosebud.
Got it. Oh, man. How did I miss that?
Yeah, so it was one of those deals where my husband and I and Brian Price, our production guy, got to spend some time with him and talk to him, and he was really nice and just cool. And I brought in some of the memorabilia that I had saved, and I had this belt buckle. Remember the big metal belt buckles back in the 70s? Well, I had one of those, had Frampton on it and a guitar, and I had it in a little jewelry box, and he's looking at it, and he'd come by and look at some other stuff I had and laugh, and they come back and he'd look at the belt buckle thing again, and and he just kept looking at it, and I said, do you want that? And he goes, I've never seen this before. And I said, I think I bought that at on the the Jersey Shore and Wildwood or something like that. And he just kept looking. I said, "Do you want it?" And he goes, "Can I have that?" And I said, "Sure, you can have it." So I gave it to him.
How cool is that? So, That's a great story there.
Yeah,
huh?
So it was cool. And I was like, I have to wonder, hey, what'd you do with your belt buckle? But then here that night, we're at Rosebud, and I went back to say hi because I was doing the stage announcements. And some bands they want you up ahead of time, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Or they'll tell you, hey, listen, you just say welcome. You're not allowed to say anything else. Here's whoever, It depends. And back in the old days, you had to do, of course, the smoking, no smoking, and all that kind of stuff.
I remember that.
So with this one, I was like, you guys tell me when you want me to go up and I'll do it. And he goes, no, you can bring us up on stage. I'm like, are you sure? And he goes, yeah. So I was like, wow, how sweet is this?
Introducing Peter Frampton.
I waited. And then I brought my brother to the show, and he was a big Frampton fan back in the day. And so I got up there, and I was like, I was so excited. I was just gushing with like sheer joy about how cool it was. I got to bring Peter Frampton on stage. So I did, and it was like just one of those really cool things.
I think about that famous was it the Frampton Comes Alive album with Billy Graham, or is it Billy Graham? Mm-hmm. It starts out, he introduces Frampton and brings him up.
Was it Billy Graham that did that? I don't know. I thought it was a disc jockey. The honorary member of San Francisco Society, Mr. Peter Frampton.
There you go. I thought
that's probably one of my favorite albums.
That was Billy Graham.
It might have been. I don't know.
That was filmed at the Winterland Ballroom, wasn't it? Or is that more of a stadium show they filmed that in?
You mean record it?
It's a live album.
Yeah.
Frampton Comes Alive. I know
You're saying film, though.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Enough
I think that was done at a couple different shows.
Okay.
One, I believe, was he just tweeted that out not too long ago. Some of it was done in a small show, and I can't remember where.
Interesting.
Yeah, he tweeted that out not too long ago, and I can't remember for the life of me where that was.
I could have sworn that voice was Billy. I had heard somewhere that was Billy Graham, and I think that maybe
we're done. I'm googling it because I always remember was, ladies and gentlemen, an honorary member of San Francisco Society, Mr. Peter Frampton.
Yeah, and I thought that was. I thought that first track from there. I knew it was mixed. I thought that was from the Winterland Ballroom show, or the multiple shows that were there.
Yeah. But there were some songs, unless they were the ones when they came back and did the second version where they added a couple of other songs to it, maybe those were the ones that were, because they did sound a little different,
Amazing. What an album.
When I need to find my happy place, that's...
Well, here's the thing about
like a song like today, Sunny Skies, Sunroof will go open, boom, I'll be playing that. I love that album.
I totally get it.
I love that album.
And that was a great album too. Why that hit for both men and women? Because I think it's a great guitar record. That's the thing people don't realize. That son of a bitch can play the guitar.
Sure. Yep.
Really play the guitar.
Yep.
Yeah, Frampton Comes Alive is just and I remember following his career in the leaner years in the late 80s, when All the Pieces Fit was named one of the records, and
Breaking All the Rules is
so
good. So good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just didn't have
David Bowie got him on the Glass Spiders tour because he was kind of down and out and needed a little
You corrected
help.
me because I was confused last time. I was confusing Frampton with Stevie Ray Vaughan because Vaughan also played with Bowie, but he played on the album,
right? But not live. Yeah, that was
Frampton
on
the tour.
Yeah,
that's just amazing.
Yeah, but they were friends from long time ago. So, yeah. All
right, I want to wrap this up with a loaded question for you.
Haven't they all been loaded questions?
I thought they were I threw some softballs over there today, Cris. It's a dirty subject, but the damn lip syncing and the backing tracks is pretty prevalent now with our legacy bands out there doing this. What has your experience been in the years you're in radio with backing tracks and lip syncing? Because it's not a new phenomenon.
Oh, no, not at all.
But it seems like it's more prevalent with these legacy bands now. And is it really live? Like, where do we draw the line?
Why can't you just have backup singers instead of backtracking?
Boston did that years ago.
Why don't you just have a group of background singers singing? Or not backgrounds, backup singers. You can still get a full sound with multiple voices. If you can't quite hit what you used to hit, they can kind of maybe muffle your abilities or you get muffled if you can't do what you used to do.
Right.
Oh, excuse me. A lot of bands do that now, where like Toto usually has a couple background singers now. Not that they're screaming or anything like that, but
well, I think theatrically, some of these arena rock bands
like
look
who's voice tracking.
There's we know who's voice tracking.
There's times I go to shows and I'm like, okay,
who isn't voice tracking?
Who isn't?
Pretty much
There's been rumors that Aerosmith has.
Yeah, I think Kiss dabbles with it. I know Aerosmith dabbles with it. I'm sure Motley Crue dabble with it on the final tour.
Oh, sure,
and
sure.
And I'm sure more's coming.
There were always rumors that Van Halen had people underneath the stage that sang.
Okay, let's go there because I was always.
I don't know. I have no idea if that's true.
Well, no, that was always a rumor in the. No. In the early '80s, I was always under the belief that Michael Anthony and Eddie Van Halen really weren't singing background.
Weren't?
No, it was
really?
kind of like that was piped in.
Interesting.
They did it on the album, or they would do it in the studio, but they couldn't pull it off correctly on stage, so they piped that in. It was David and a backing track. That's what I was.
Oh, wow.
Now, maybe I'm wrong.
What tour are we talking about?
1984 tour, the Diver Down tour before that.
Well, then they were playing keyboards, so that could have easily been done. Whereas back when I saw them on Diver Down, that's the first tour I saw them on, there were no keyboards really at that point.
I see your point.
So there's a possibility with keyboards you could do something like that, but then anybody could be under the stage doing it too. I mean, I'm not stupid. I had heard that they had people. I mean, I'd like to hear Michael Anthony just sing.
Oh, he can sing. Because
his voice is the high of the Van Halen.
They couldn't pull it off live. That maybe Eddie was the weak link in that duo.
Yeah,
maybe,
that I don't know. Back in the '80s when I worked at XX, I saw the band Dead or Alive. You spin me round.
Yeah. I only know from that one song.
They had that, and they had a couple other songs, and at the show, and I think it was the ballroom of the Syria Mosque, I believe,
which is in the basement, right?
And I'm kind of walking around looking at people, those shows, everybody dressed to the nines, which was always so much fun. So I'm walking around and I'm standing behind the board, and the board has pots on it, and when pots are up, you're on. Right. When pots are down, you're off, and all the pots were down.
Wow.
So I was like, wait a second, could they possibly just be up there lip syncing the whole entire? But how do you do drumming and stuff like that? I mean, they did have a drummer, and I recall they had like maybe a keyboard player and a guitar player or something like that. But
is the drummer playing to his own track?
I guess, because let's face it, when they used to do the Dick Clark shows, 9 times out of 10 they were never live.
Oh, of course
they
not.
were always. But sometimes
and Soul Train, same thing.
Band might have been, but what are they doing? They're actually playing to a track, but they're actually playing along with that track.
Yeah. But you expect that, I think, on television.
Sure.
If you're paying for it, it's a different ballgame to me.
But yeah, I was just, okay, this is interesting. So that was like my first time. I was like, wait a second, if those pots aren't up, then he's not literal. Nobody's doing anything.
Everybody's dabbling with it, and I think the idea of giving the fans the very best show possible, it just blurs the line between what is really live and what is Memorex, right? I mean,
correct. Going back to that, but if you're going to charge the amount of money they're charging for tickets pre-pandemic, is that fair? Is that right to really charge the outrageous amounts of money for a show when you're not really getting a live show?
That's my question.
Yeah, so that's where it's not fair.
Yeah, that's my question.
If you're going to have backing tracks or most of your shows not really live, then back off the ticket price.
I think bands would be. How about this for an idea? Like, if a band's going to do this on a show because they want to, maybe because of aging vocals or whatever, couldn't they make a disclaimer at the beginning of the tour and say, during this, we're going to enhance the production of our show for you. Word it any way you want, but get out front of it. It's because fans aren't stupid, and they see video clips from shows, and you're never going to get it all right. You're going to walk away from a mic when you're still singing. It's going to happen during the course of a show. You can't run from the cell phone anymore.
Right.
Get out front of it and say.
But is that the same thing as somebody doing this over-the-top spectacular show with all kinds of great staging and lighting and videos that take your mind off of,
that's part of it.
That's the same thing.
That's definitely part of it.
So,
yeah. Good point. I can't argue that.
So
I can't argue that.
You're paying for the spa or whatever you want to call it. You're paying for all the wow factor of the actual staging, but maybe the artist isn't giving a full live show in the way of their performance. And
I think that's how the artists are couching it. Like, I think the theory is that, we're putting on this amazing, I guess it's come down to the philosophy. When we were young, we went to see a concert.
Right.
Now things are events. We talked about this last show where people would go to a country show at the stadium because it was an event to drink and party. They might not even know who the artist is.
Right.
That's not how we grew up on music.
No.
We went to the concert because it was so-and-so band that was playing their songs and we're going to see that show.
Right.
It's different now.
And you were always hoping that, I hope they have a good opening act because I'd like to learn. I'd like to have like a new band to
everything.
like.
We wanted
a new band to like
dive
too.
Into everything. Yeah. And oftentimes that once in a while an opening act would make it. And that was exciting.
Oh, Journey blew Foreigner off the stage.
There you
First
go.
time I saw them. Yeah.
Bon Jovi blew Rat off the stage in '85 in the Civic Arena. It was so apparent.
Yeah.
And then next year, Bon Jovi's way bigger than Rat ever could have been.
Right.
Yeah, and I remember FM opened for Rush in the '70s. I'm going, that FM band was great. And I went home and tried to get into them, and then they just didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And
there were a lot of bands. Oh, Angel.
They opened for
were
Kiss.
Awesome. They played
Punky
here
Meadows.
for $1.25. I remember that.
Wow.
I was, I think, in 9th grade or something like that, and it was it was a special radio station thing. It was
cool.
$1.25 or something like that. Yeah, Punky Meadows.
Punky Meadows.
Yeah.
It goes way back.
Greg Giuffria was in that too.
Greg Giuffria, and he had a little gig for a while, right? Giuffria, Gene Simmons managed them for a period of time. I think.
I understand. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's him. He actually he came up with some kind of device for slot machines, and they say he is like a bazillionaire. I'm almost sure it's him. There was him, or there's another guy that kind of like on that same keyboard player or something for a band, and just a tech guy. And
that's crazy.
Yeah, came up with something for some piece of technology. I think it was for something with jackpots or slot machines. Yeah, so
I believe it.
So that's why you won't see Greg Giuffria around anymore.
Why would you blame him?
He's okay.
Do you blame him?
Everybody, he's okay.
Him and Billy Squier, they're doing okay in their retirements.
I want to look into Billy Squier and see where he has been, because I like I said, I love that Christmas song, and recently hearing that.
There's a
nice.
guy that should make a comeback.
Yeah,
a comeback because his music is universally loved by our age bracket, right?
Absolutely,
he definitely had hits.
Yeah, for sure. Did
you have fun?
I did.
I did. You gonna come back and see me again?
Sure, I'm sure something's going to happen between now and then that will be like all these people selling their songwriting credits and all that stuff to these big companies.
Do you blame them though?
No, I don't. Not when they're the age they are. I mean, the Beach Boys just signed their stuff away to Irving Azoff, and I see it as at least. The Beach Boys as a band and a family have always been dysfunctional. Have always had issues. But I mean, multiple kids and things like that. So this at least will give them the money so that everybody gets taken care of.
Absolutely, 100%.
I just hope that, it's the Beach Boys. Their music's and everything anyway. Right. But there's a lot of artists that are doing it. Dylan had done it, and Stevie Nicks now, Fleetwood Mac. And,
I think Dylan just did it, didn't he?
Yeah, a couple months ago. I think he made like $400 million.
My God. The amounts of money is incredible.
Does Jacob Dylan really need that much money? I know he has other children, but, so maybe in a situation like that, then they know that everybody's going to be taken care of. Because you look at somebody like Aretha Franklin, when she died, her estate was a mess. Yeah. She was hiding, she had like 7 or 8 handwritten wills hidden under the cushions of her couch.
She wasn't well.
No,
toward the end.
But I mean, it's just like you have money. Prince dying and not having a will, that just is mind blowing.
I was so disappointed in the way the things that came out after Prince died. I always had put him like on this pillar for being so anti-drug and all that because his talent was incredible. But then in the end, you realize he was just a cat addicted to pills.
Yeah.
And for how long was that going on?
Well, and you understand why. I mean, he was doing those splits, and he always had to wear heels to make him look a little taller than he was.
I get it. But it's just, and it's amazing he was able to do that on pills.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but that was a shock because it was like, what? Well, leading up to that, he had that issue on the plane where they had to land him somewhere else, coming back from somewhere, and so that was like a little bit of a red flag. But
but did you really go there? I mean, did you go from that to like that was that's a once in a lifetime artist that you're just not going to see that again.
Yeah, and talk about a guy who kind of fit a lot of different genres.
He was his own genre.
Yeah, right. Multi-talented, and I really. It's sad that people don't realize what an incredible guitar player he was. Amazing, really great guitar player.
And he wasn't a rock guitar player. He was a guitar player. Right. He could play everything. Right. I remember there was during Live Aid. He didn't play Live Aid, but he mailed in something, and he basically gave them a video of him sitting, and he's playing Spanish acoustic, I think, on there.
Oh wow!
Or something. I'm like
flamenco.
He could do anything.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a really multi-talented, multifaceted artist for sure.
Did you have fun?
I had fun, absolutely.
You got to come back and see me again.
Sure.
We could do this for days.
I got nothing else going on. So.
We could do this for days.
I'll be your Toadie Fields. Remember her on the Mike Douglas show?
Yeah, another Kiss reference.
I
remember Gene. Gene Simmons' their first appearance.
Yes.
And she's and she goes, "And who are you?" And then she goes, "Who are you supposed to be?" And he goes, "I'm evil incarnate." And she looks at him and looks at his ears and goes, "Oh, you're just a good Jewish boy from the Bronx."
Yeah, I mean, but who was she? You know?
Well, Joanne Worley was a thing on the Hollywood Squares, right?
Well, she was on Laugh-In too.
Okay.
She was on
then
Laugh-In.
Who was on Hollywood Squares that really just was known for the Hollywood Squares?
There were a ton of people that were like
just
that.
Known from
but I
that.
mean, just Toadie Fields was always on Mike Douglas.
Yeah, that was
and I loved his show because I'd run home from the bus stop and I'm like, I loved because he had Kiss on all
Toadie
these,
Fields,
and then it'd be like,
man.
and he'd be like, it's Toadie Fields again. I'm like, who is this woman?
No one's ever going to say that about you, no matter how many times you show up.
She was a comedian, from what I understand. But yeah,
Joanne Worley.
No, Toadie Fields.
I know.
Eric's Toadie Fields. And it's Toadie, not Tony.
Toadie Fields.
Toadie Fields.
Come back and see me, friend.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right.
All right. Friends.
See ya.
We're out.
Bye. Peace out.
Peace out. That's the kids do now, right? Peace out, right? Yeah. Woo!
Hello. You're listening to the Eric McKenna Project.